Hello everyone, welcome back. I hope you all have practiced whatever we have covered so far. And TestNG is widely used, and without using TestNG, you cannot really learn Selenium. So Selenium and TestNG is really tightly coupled. So make sure that you are following TestNG and practicing it accordingly. Right? TestNG is very easy, right? So it does give us a lot of features which the basic standalone Java doesn't give us, right? So for example, you want to do multi-threading, you want to run parallel testing, TestNG have easy features. Okay. Again, there are cases where you want to have reports which again TestNG provides, but this is not really good. We will see how else we could create a more beautiful report than this, right? Because this report is not really eye appealing, so your managers won't be even getting impressed with this. So we will see about that. But that particular day when we try to run the single test, it was all working, but when we try to run the test at the class level, the tests were running fine. There is no problem with the tests, but the reports were not getting generated. So what I do, I delete this. Okay, I'll try to create one more now, but this time without running it, I'll first go and modify the configuration. So it seems the configuration is different for even the class level and individual scripts. So I'm going to the listeners again, and then I'll use default reporters, click on apply and click on run. And once you do this, it will basically produce the reports for you. So that day I forgot to change this particular configuration. I thought both are same, but you know but normally we won't be running at this class level. We will generate a testng file and then we will run it from there. So we'll see how we can do that. Okay, so one test is passed, now the second test is running. So I hope you all can understand and follow till here, right? And now if there is only two tests, I can, that's fine. But right, if there are 100 tests and 1000 tests, I want to manage them really well, right? At the time, if you run it from a testng file, it will be more easy for you to do the configuration. For example, you don't have to really do a lot of things. Okay, you just need to go to this particular project folder, whatever you have, right click, and here there will be something called as create testng.xml. In your IntelliJ, you might not see this option because you might not have installed a particular plugin, right? For that, you can go to file settings, and then you can go to the plugin section here, and you can go to the marketplace and search for create TestNG XML. And this is a particular plugin that you need to install, right? For example, you go here and search create TestNG XML, right? Something like this. And for you, it will tell you like install, and then click on install, click on apply, and click on OK. And then you should see the options there. Okay. So now I have already installed it. I'm not installing it for you. You have to install it. After that, you can click on right click and then come to create testng.xml. And now it's telling, okay, it has processed and created a testng.xml for us. That's fine. Yeah, let's just click on it. And now let's also do the reload. Okay, once you reload, you could see something called as testng.xml, which is what the driving factor for uh, us in the whole future. So we will be running our tests from using this particular testng.xml. Again, this is not really aligned, formatted properly. So I will use let's say online XML formatter, right? Just to format it, right? So now I can copy this to clipboard and go here, remove all this, and then place it. Right now, this is all formatted, and again we could be able to see what it has generated, right? So for example, the suite name what we are going to have is all test suite, and which is again customizable. You can go ahead and change the suite name. So maybe this is my regression suite that I want to run, right? And I'll come to this test hierarchy. And for example, here we have something called as classes, which means what and all the class you want to run it. For example, it will automatically pick all the classes. It will pick all the classes that have at the rate test methods in it. Okay, it doesn't pick any test2 or these things because they don't have a test method. They all have main method. So TestNG.xml is smart. Okay, the plugin is smart enough to identify which classes is having methods annotated with test. So for example, this is the first test that we want to run, and this is the second test we want to run, right? So these are all the methods, right? So if you go here, verify orange HRM page is the first test method, and verify invalid password error is the second test. So we want to run these two tests. Instead of running it from here, you can basically run it from here as well, right? And yeah, let's try to run it and then see how this works. Okay, to run it, again, right click on run testng.xml. So basically we are telling in the testng package, there is some class. In that particular class, there are two methods. You run those two methods. And now again, the scripts getting started. Again, it is executing those scripts. Right, very simple thing. And if you don't want to run something, okay, then you can basically remove this or comment this. Control Shift and slash is what you can use to comment it out, right? And now if you run this, it will only run this particular method, right? So you have the control on which one to run, which one not to run. Okay, now apart from this, there are a lot of other features, but if you understand till here, we will see one important feature that is called as before method and after method annotations. Uh, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to create one more thing. Again, guys, when we run it using TestNG.xml as well, we will get the test output, right? And we will see that index.html, which is what we want, and it will have the reports, right? So now if you notice, the regression suite is the name that we have given. Okay, and if you notice, there are two test methods and two of them got passed. Okay, so you can see what are the methods that are getting passed, and you can also go to the times so that you can see how much time it took. So the first test took 17 seconds, and almost 9 seconds the second test took. So it is a little bit okay. For now, we'll have a better report later point of time, but just understand index.html will be created every time you run a TestNG test, right? Good. So let me close this, and let's see some more good features about that TestNG, right? For example, if you notice, we are repeating some same lines of code everywhere in the two tests. Okay, let me zoom out a little bit, and if you notice, uh, Chrome launching, the URL loading, the username, password is all basically same. Maybe in the password alone we are doing this, but yeah, and again at the end we are actually quitting. Okay, maybe these three lines and last two lines, sorry, last line is what we are repeating in the both the test case, right? So every time we run a test, we need to open browser, we need to open the URL. So this is something that is really common before we try to perform our whatever the operation we want to do. So this is really common, right? So if there is any way that you could optimize this, right? And that's when they have one more annotation. For example, can create one more method. For me, let's say I will name it as setup method. Okay, so because it is doing the setup process for us, so just add one annotation on top of it at the rate. Okay, before method. Okay, that's it, guys. So once you add before method, which means this will be executed before all these methods. Okay, for example, I can basically move this whole stuff to here. Okay, and here also I will remove this. We don't need this. Okay, now this is throwing error because the web driver is basically a local variable, and this method doesn't know how to access it. So what we have to do, we have to give it as a global access so that it's applicable to all the one. Okay, now all the errors are gone, and we will remove this and point this. So the color here also indicates the whatever the variable that you declare here is here, right? So the same color indicates you are referencing the same variable. Okay, again I can make this as a private because this thing is basically only used within this particular class, correct? So as I told, access modifier indicates which classes can access this. Now this is really cool, right? So you have to perform some operation before the method, and this before method going to help you. And after doing all the operation, you want to close the browser. The driver.quit is actually helping us to close the browser. So you can also reuse this. So for example, I'll create one more method, public void close browser, right? And this method I'll tell driver.quit. And on top of this, just add after method. Okay. So what it happens, right? First, when we try to run this particular test, okay, it first checks, is there any before method of for this. Okay, yes, there is a before method, so it will go and execute this. Okay, and then it will come and execute all this. Once it completes its execution, it will check whether there is an after method for this. Okay, yes, there is an after method, so it will execute this. Okay, so this before method and after method is applicable for both the test cases. Okay, for this one as well. So second, it will try to run this particular test case. While start to run, it will check whether there is a before method. Yes, there is a before method, so it will execute this. Then it will execute all these statements. Then it will come here and it will execute this. So this is how the before method and after method can help us. Again, guys, the order where you are keeping this method doesn't matter. Okay, for example, I can keep the after method on top of this. That doesn't matter. Okay, it doesn't matter. So you can keep it anywhere. It only going to understand it based on the annotation you are providing on top of it. Okay, annotations, we will come to learn what is annotation in detail, but for now just understand like it's like highlighting this method is going to do something different is what annotation does. Okay, good. Let's try to run the same test now. Maybe we'll try to just run only this. Okay, so this test doesn't have a code to run the browser here. It has in the before method. Let's see whether it is launching the browser. So yeah, test is getting passed. So it launched the browser because it has before method, and it even closed the browser because it has after method. So that's the advantage. So you are not writing the same lines of code everywhere. Only the test is here. Okay, you are focusing only least focusing on how the browser is getting started, how it is getting closed and all that. You are focusing directly on the test case what you want to do. Okay, even when we write a manual test case, we won't tell open the browser. Okay, open URL. So you won't do that, right? So that's why these before methods and after methods will be really helpful. Okay, now what we will do, we will try to understand these annotations. What are the other annotations we have in detail? So for that, maybe TestNG, I'll name it as TestNG Annotations test, something like this. Okay, a name looks like a little awkward, but don't worry about the name. Okay, so first let's have that test, which is very important for us. Public void test one. Let's keep it as test one. The name of the test. Okay, and I'm going to tell in test one. Okay, very simple. Okay, and we'll also create one more before method, and this we will name it as public void before method. You can name it anything. Okay, you can name it before method, you can name it setup. Okay, whatever. And here we'll tell in before method, and we'll also create one more after method, and we'll public void. People normally name it as tear down because this normally gets executed to tear down all these things. Okay, to wrap up things. Okay, so maybe you can also tell wrap up. Okay, whatever, but more conventional name people uses tear down. Okay, anything that you feel more comfortable, you can use. And I can just mention in after method. Okay, now let's try to run this test and see what's happening. You all can guess, right? So first the before method will be executed, then this one, and then after method. Right? If you have guessed like that, that's fine. Okay, so if you notice, first the before method is getting executed, in test1 is getting executed after that, and whatever we have in the after method is getting executed after that. Okay, now let's assume you have two tests. Okay, let's also create one more test. Okay, now can anyone tell me what will be the output if I run this whole class? Can anyone tell what will be the output if I run the whole class?
It will be in before method, then in test1, in test2, and then in after method.
Okay, any other tries?
Uh, it will be in before method in test1, then in after method, then again it in before method in test2, and then in after method 2 times, like one
Yeah,
flow.
yeah. So exactly, right. So for example, whenever we are trying to run the test, again guys, I'll tell the basic flow. First it will search for all the test annotation. Okay, once it find that test annotation, now it will need to decide which one to be executed first. To decide which one is executed first it will check whether is there any priority. Okay, no priority set, so by default all the priorities are 0. So there are two tests it has to run, both of them having priority as 0. Then it will go and check which test is alphabetically first. So test 1 is alphabetically first, then test 2. Okay, so it now decides, okay, I need to run the test 1. Now this is fine, but before running the test, it will check whether there is any annotation that is starting with @before. Yes, there is one. So it will go and execute this, and then it will come and execute the test, and then it will check whether there is any after method annotation. So it will go and check this as well. So this will run this. Next, again, it already knows that it has to run the test2 next. It comes here, it runs it. Before running it, it will check whether if there is any before method. Yes, it will go and run it. So if there is any after method, it will go and run it after running the test2. So always keep in mind, before method and after method is applicable for all the tests. Okay, it's not only for one test, it will be applicable for all the tests. Okay, so the output will be in before method test1 after method, in before method test2 after method. Let's try to run it and see. So if you notice, in before method in test1, in after method in before method test2 after method. Okay, now, so in terms of Selenium, what we normally use is this one. We will use to launch browsers. Okay, because all the tests we want to launch the browsers. Okay, here we will write the exact test. Okay, we will focus only on the test. Here we will basically do quitting the browser, quit the browsers. Okay, we'll close the browser. So these codes we will normally write in the before method and after method. Again, there is something called as before class. Okay, there is something called as before class. Okay, public void before class. Okay, and a sort in before class. Then there is something called as after class. Okay, if there is something called as before, there will be something called as after class, after as well, right? So public void after class. Okay. And here we'll tell in after class. Okay, so let's remove this particular or comment this particular piece of test, and someone can tell me what will be the output if I run this particular test. Any random tries just based on the name. Okay, you don't have to be correct all the time.
It would be, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, it would be before class first, then it would be the before method, I mean in before method, then in test1, and then in after method, and then in after class.
Okay, Kalai, what is your idea? What is your answer?
It will start from the,
Same answer?
yeah, from
Okay, okay. So yes, whatever he told is correct. So class hierarchy is before the method hierarchy. So if you want to execute something before executing your classes, then you can use this before class annotations. Okay. So if I try to run this test now, so that TestNG will first check if there is any before annotations, and then if there is two, so it will check what kind of annotation follows it. So before class, before method. So before class has more, so in terms of hierarchy, it is the topmost. So it will execute that. Okay. So if you notice, before class, before method, test one, after method, after class. Now I will tweak the question. Okay. Now what will be the output for this?
Before class will be executed only once, and again after that before method test, after method, then before method test, after method, and last after class. After class, yes.
Okay. Okay. So anyone else?
Yes, it would be the same, Amuthan.
Okay, so just understand, so the before class will be executed only once. Okay, before running your class test class. Okay, before the after class will be executed after executing all the tests in your class. Okay, so but the before method and after method is applicable for each of these tests. Okay, so if you run this now, you'll get before class, in before method, in test one, in after method, and then in before method, in test two, after class. Okay, so before class, before method, test one, after method, before method, right? Test two, after method, after class. So this is how it is, right? So this is very easy to understand. Again, where we will use the before class, I never use it. Okay, I never used it. So you might also probably not use it. Okay, this one is also I never used in Selenium. In Selenium perspective, I have never used it. So okay, is that all, Amudan? Do we have anything else? You are telling a lot of these things. Okay, yes, there is even more than that. So there is something called as before suite. Okay, public void before suite. Okay, and you have something like this. In after suite. Okay, so anyone can tell me, let's say I'll come on this. Can anyone tell me what will be the output for all this? So I cannot put them all in one screen. Maybe I'll also minimize this. I will try to wrap these things. Okay, so what would be the output, guys? Very small. Okay, anyways, what would be the output? No guesses?
Before suit will be executed first.
Yeah, okay. After that,
After that will be before class.
okay.
And then before method.
Mm-hmm.
Then this.
Mm-hmm.
And then after method. After method. Then after class and after suit.
Okay, very good. So this is how the exact order will be. That's really good. And yeah, so the before suite is one hierarchy up. Okay, so it's not one hierarchy, it's two hierarchy up, but yeah, suite is basically greater than classes. Okay, and classes are basically greater than this. Okay, your methods. Okay, so you have before method, that's in the lowest thing, and then we have classes, and then we have suite. Okay, let's try to run it. Okay, now this is all fine, right? So we have before suite that is executed first, then class, and then method, and then after method, after class, and after suite. Again, the order in which your, suppose for example, the after suite is arranged after the before suite, but there isn't, so the place where you are keeping the code doesn't really matter. It all checks about the annotation and it will execute accordingly. Okay, so in real world, we normally use this to basically create database connection. One time operation will be kept here. Okay, database connection or reports initialization. Okay, so these kind of things will be done here. For example, why we are creating a database connection only once? Okay, because if you are having 1000 tests, okay, if you are putting the database connection, if you are creating the database connection in before method, it will try to create 1000 connections with your databases. Okay, so that's an expensive piece of operation, performing a connection to your database, right? So we create only one time the connection, only one time, and we will use that particular object to read from the database. Okay, we don't want to create multiple connection with our database, so that we are loading our database as well, right? So this is not a good approach. So we will create, if you want to do something only once for your entire test suite, we'll do that. Okay, here, and for after suite we'll close the database connection, we'll close the DB connection, and we'll also do the reports tier. Okay, reports close, whatever. Okay, only one time we will do. So we'll start creating reports here. We'll also close the reports here. Okay, after all the tests are executed, we need a report, so we'll do that here. Okay, there is something called as before test, at the rate before test, and at the rate after a test. But yeah, that test is basically fits here. Okay, before so there is something called as test. Okay, so that test, let's say I have something called as at the rate before. See, if you notice, there are 5 things. Okay, I haven't covered the groups yet, but method we have covered, class, suite is we covered, but before test is something that is between the suite and class, public void before test. Okay, okay, and then we have s out in before test. Okay, so I'm not adding the after test, but just to confirm how this works. So basically test is a collection of multiple classes. Okay, and suite is a collection of multiple tests, and class is a collection of multiple test methods. Okay, if you notice, suite, test, class, and method. Okay, so that's the hierarchy, guys, and this test is not this test. Okay, so basically whatever the test that we are using here is basically a collection of classes. Okay, so collection of methods is basically this, right? So collection of methods is class collection of, so we have test methods, right? So collection of this test1 and test2 is class. Okay, is a class, and collection of multiple classes we can term it as a test, and collection of multiple tests is a suite. Again, it is not necessary that you have to use all of them. So normally the test is something that we don't use. So yeah, you don't have to really bother about it for now. Okay, so let's remove all these things. Okay, we have understood what is the hierarchy and all that. Let's do some cleanup. Okay, I'll not use any of these for time's sake. Okay, because it will basically confuse you. So we'll remove all that. Now we have very simple things. Okay, I have one test one, and then we have tear down, right? And now let's also see other stuff that you can provide. So for example, we have something called as priority. Okay, okay, can anyone tell me which test will be executed first?
Test 2.
Okay, so I have given priority as -3. Is that a valid value? It will work. I'm giving it a negative.
It works. First it will execute minus.
Okay, my concern is whether this will work. The minus, I'm using minus, right?
Yes, Amuthan, it should work.
Okay, okay, so you guys already know about TestNG. Okay, I thought I will confuse you, but yeah. So even you can give priorities in minus. So whatever the smaller number, it will be executed first. For example, the test2 is executed first because -3 is basically smaller than 2. So we have already seen about the priorities, right? So normally don't use this priority. Okay, the problem with priority is if you are trying to run the test in parallel, it might not really help you out. Okay, so normally I'm not a big fan of using priorities, so don't use priorities, but just just know about them. That's very important. But again, there is something called as a description. Is a place where you can give a detailed description of to check whether the audience, okay, can understand something. Okay, whatever. Okay, some detailed description of this test. Okay, because the test one doesn't implies anything. Okay, same way you can also add description here to check whether the user can log in, whatever. So can log in to the application. Okay, whatever the detailed description you can give, you can give it here. Okay, so description is again one more thing where you can pass these values. Okay, apart from that, there is something called as invocation count. Okay, let's remove this, and there is something called as invocation count, and this by default is 1, but I'm telling 10. Okay, can anyone tell me what will be the output? So let me also comment this out. What will be the output for this code?
It
You
will
will
run it 10 times.
So what will be the output? So will the before method will be executed 10 times, or only the test will be executed 10 times?
I
Before-
guess only test will execute 10 times.
Okay, let's see what's happening. What's happening? So it will also execute your before method and after method as well. Okay.
Okay.
10 times. So the test will be executed 10 times. Every time it will check whether there is a before method and after method, and then it will execute them as well. Okay. Again, so we understood what is an invocation count, but there is something called a thread pool size, and I'm giving us 3 here. So what happens now? Well, let me increase it to 5. What happens? So
Five threads
basically,
of
yes.
5 threads of this method will be running parallelly.
Yes. So for example, we want to run this test 10 times, but if you're running this test 10 times, it will take a lot of time, right? So what we are telling, hey, run this test 10 times, but create 5 threads. So threads means it's like the starting and the ending point. For let's draw a simple diagram to understand what is. Whenever I mean test, sorry, the thread. So imagine something like this. Okay, your program starts here. Okay, your program starts here, and then it ends here. Okay. So while it starts and end, it executes certain events. Okay, it launches something, it closes browser, whatever, it finds some elements, whatever, and then at the end it'll end. Okay, so this is one thread. Okay, imagine you are using a WhatsApp in your mobile. Okay, now this is occupying one thread. So whatever the operation you do in this is basically with the help of one thread. Let's say while using WhatsApp, you're also opening your Facebook on the other window, or even you are using something like a split screen. Okay, so what happens? So there are 2 threads. Okay, one thread is responsible for your WhatsApp, and another thread is responsible for your Facebook. Okay, so same thing. Okay, it will execute all the events in your Facebook. Okay, suddenly there is a Instagram notification that's popping in. So there is another thread that's being populated. So this is called as multi-threading, guys. So at the same time, we are performing a lot of different tasks. Here also, when I mean multi-threading, you all need to imagine it's like parallel threads. Okay, so parallelly, a lot of sequence of actions will be executed. For example, here we want to run 10 times, but if I run 10 times, the time will be more. So I'm opening 5 threads. Okay, and then so that five of them will be run in parallel. Once that 5 completed, another 5 will be picked, and another 5 will be run. Okay, so now let's try to run and see. Basically you can see the time, right? So basically it took almost 25 seconds to run them, right? Maybe each of them took 1 millisecond, 0 milliseconds. So it's a very small test, so you cannot see the differences. But yeah, when in terms of Selenium, you'll see a lot of difference. So if you notice, all of these will be executed in, 5 of them will be executed in parallel. For example, we have 5 before method, and then in test 1, and then in after method. After that, again, we have other things. Okay. Again, don't exactly expect this output. Okay. So here, the 2 of the threads are really fast. Okay. And then one of the thread is very fast, so it executed the before method, and it executed the test 1 as well before executing the after method. So some threads can be really fast. Okay, you cannot really predict the speeds in which they are going to execute. Okay, so we cannot say okay, wait for all the child threads to as the same speed. Okay, we cannot do that. So here they're all executed in the same speed, so we are getting same expected output. Okay, if you run it again, it might not be necessarily the case. Okay, so just understand there is something called as thread pool size, which basically gives you the advantage of running the test in parallel. Okay, again, there is something called as timeout. Okay, so timeout, basically I want to give 3. Okay, so what is this L? Okay, this L means, okay, it's, you don't have to really mention this, but the maximum time for this test. Okay, for example, you have some test in your production that's running for 10 seconds or 15 seconds or maybe 15 minutes. You don't want to do that. Okay, maybe due to some reasons you want to close it if it executes more than a particular period of time. Okay, so in those cases this will be really helpful. So you can set the maximum time it can take. For example, we are giving 3 seconds, but I'm giving thread.sleep for 5 seconds. Okay. Let's try to run it now. So most of the tests will fail. So if you notice, all of them got ignored basically. So maybe I'll remove all this. It is getting confused. So let's keep it really simple. So if you notice, there is a clear explanation that the test 1 didn't finish within the timeout of 3 seconds. Okay, because we are voluntarily waiting for 5 seconds. So after 3 seconds, it will say, hey, the test maximum time they have set as 3 seconds. You are exceeding it, so I'm marking it as a failure. Okay, so these kind of features, we normally don't use it in Selenium, but just get to know about them, right? And apart from that, we might have even some advantages. So let's see what and all things. Okay, there is something called as depends on methods. Okay, so let's see what is that. For example, I'll have some more method. Let's say uh, the method name is I am important. Okay, and here in important method, and here I can basically tell depends on method is I am. So I'll copy this. Okay, now let's try to run the test and see what's happening. And I should also remove the thread.sleep. And okay, sorry guys, at the rate test, I forgot to include that at the rate test. Okay, now if you notice, I'm trying to run this particular test alone. Okay, but I'm telling, hey, you also make sure that you run this test before executing this. Okay, so that's it. So let's try to run it. Again, guys, you don't need to really know all these things, but yeah, so if you notice, the before method is executed. After that, we have something called as depend on methods, and there is I am important, so it will go and execute this, and then it executes the other things. Okay, again, we have before method and after method, so it was a little confusing. So maybe you can comment it out. So normally, guys, I am not a big fan of using depends on methods and groups. Okay, depends on groups. There is something called as depends on groups. Okay, because these gives you erratic behaviors when you are using a lot of things in stuff. Okay, it might give you unnecessary confusion. So let me try to comment it out and let's try to run it. So I will run only this. So for example, it should only run this, but since we have this annotation, it will go and execute this. Okay, so in important method is run before executing this. Okay, but if you don't have this, okay, it will only execute this particular in test one. Since we are using it with before method and after method, it was a little confusing. Again, the same way, I can also group test cases. For example, let me put this as belongs to group. Okay, this is login test, and also this is a part of smoke test. Okay, something like this. Okay, so this belongs to two groups. Now on also you can just okay, now I can tell instead of depends on methods, I can just tell depends on groups. Okay, and I can tell this is depending upon login group. Okay, something like this. So if I try to run it now, okay, so now the important method is ran before executing your uh, test one. Okay, this is because depends on groups. Again, guys, you can group test cases with a tag. Okay, for example, this particular test is part of login as well as smoke. Okay, you can forget about this depends on groups and depends on methods because that's really not important. We are not going to use that, but just that it's a feature in TestNG. There are a lot of features in TestNG. We're not going to use all of them. Okay, only the important ones we will use. For example, I'll also name this groups. This is also part of login. Okay, but this is not a smoke test. This is only part of regression. Okay, now you can decide whether you want to run this at the runtime. Okay, suppose you want to run only the test cases that are regression test. Okay, or only smoke test you want to run. Okay, you have option to configure that in TestNG. Okay, so let's go here in the TestNG.xml. You can basically add one more thing in before. Okay, let's say, so you can basically remove these class names, all these things not. So I'll have a class. Just a minute. So I'll remove these methods. So now we want to run which class? So we want to run TestNG and TestNG annotation test. Okay, just remove this and type TestNG annotation test. So we will get this. But in this, I want to only run the ones with the group name of smoke. Okay, only the smoke test I want to run. So I can just say groups. Okay, you just add a thing and then it will tell you. See, I'm also not memorizing all these things. Okay, I want to run only few things. What do you want to run? I want to only include all the tests that are having name as all the tests that is having a group name as smoke. Okay, and then I'll close this. Okay, that's it, guys. So now if I try to run this, okay, there are two things. Okay, two tests here. One is login regression and login and smoke. But since we are only trying to run smoke, only the IM important test will be run. Okay, let's try to go here. Oh, why my thing is not going out? Okay, maybe I'll open it again, the TestNG.xml, and right click and run as TestNG.xml. There is one chat. Okay, file path. That's okay. Good. So in important method is getting executed because that's the part of this particular group. Suppose I want to run login test. What happens? It runs both the tests because both the tests are part of the login group. Okay, so let's try to run it. So if you notice in important method in test one, both are getting executed. But again, you can also exclude certain groups. For example, I'm going to exclude smoke. Okay, so now what it means? Okay, run all the tests which are having part of the group of login, but okay, exclude the test which is part of the smoke test group. Okay, so can anyone tell me which method will be executed now?
Only the regression.
Yeah, so only the regression means what is the test name? There are only two tests. Test one, I am important. Test
That is
one.
one only.
Yes, so that's what we're going to execute. So you get the control. So if there are, yeah, if you are having 1,000 tests, guys, there is some voice break. Okay. Okay. So now if you notice only the test one is getting executed. The advantage of using groups is because if you want to, if you're having 1,000 groups, 1,000 test cases, they all part of some groups. Okay, login, smoke test, regression test. You want to run only smoke test. Okay, then you can mention include name equal to smoke. Or if you want to run regression test, you can mention include name equal to regression. Okay, so it will run all of them, right? Good. So that's the advantage of using groups. Okay. There are other important advantages like data providers. We will see the data provider, which is really, really important uh, tomorrow. That's a very important topic. So we need to see that tomorrow. And apart from that, we have almost covered most of the TestNG things. There are something called as listeners, which is pending. We'll try to cover that. In today's session, all you need to worry about is before method and before suite, after method and after suite, because that's what we are going to use in our Selenium framework. Other things might not be really necessary. We won't be using. Okay, there is no need for using them. Okay, so there are a lot of things that we will learn, but we will only use what we need. Okay, it's not mandatory that you have to use everything. Okay, so at the end of the day, what we try to achieve is try to create more readable test, understandable test. Okay, we are not showcasing whatever we know in TestNG. Okay, these things I have explained like suite test and all that is just basically for interview point of view, and then you also need to know about it. But apart from that, we are not going to use any of these. Okay, the before method and before suite is very important. Okay, that's all from my side. Any questions you want to ask before we wrap this class?
One query, Amazon.
Okay, one by one. Okay, go ahead, Jayanti. Anwar, I will come to you next.
The thing is, if we have some preconditions in our test, right? What we'll be using that for preconditions?
What do you mean by preconditions? So
I
precondition is
mean, before running the test, some tests should be passed, like that. I mean, for example,
we don't do that. Okay, we don't do any of that. Okay, so all your tests needs to run on its own. Okay, so that you will not use depends on methods, depends on groups. See, normally people will use depends on methods and depends on groups and all that. So they will use depends on methods so that it, this particular important is ran before this. Okay, but that is not a good approach. Okay, I have developed almost 40-50 automation suites and automated so many websites. From my learnings, okay, all your tests needs to be independent. Okay, needs to be independent. This is one of the important thing. Okay, if you are thinking that you are repeating the same thing again and again, that's fine, but all your tests needs to be independent. That's very important. Okay, it should open the browser, it should do the login, it should add the product to the cart. If you want to check the payment, you need to add the product to the cart, or you need to navigate to that product description page. You need to click on add to cart, you need to go to the payment, you need to complete it. Okay, so every test needs to be independent. Okay, you reuse some methods like navigate to this particular page or click on this particular button, you reuse them, that's absolutely fine, but your test needs to be independent. Okay, you should not depend on any other things. Okay, so just keep one thing in mind. A test should fail because it is failing. Okay, it should not fail because of some other dependency, and then so that's the reason it's failing. Okay, so yeah, your test, all the tests needs to be independent. Keep this in your mind. You should never depend on a test, should not depend on any other things. Okay, it should be, if you run this particular test on, it should run. Okay, it should run only this, it should run. Okay, there shouldn't be any impact on the test because of other tests. That's the important thing. Okay,
okay, thanks.
okay, go ahead, Anwar.
Well, then let's assume that the before methods are used for like kind of initializations. I can, if I use that before method twice, is there any hierarchy will be followed?
Again, based on the name, right? So you have setup, right? Setup is starting with yes, alphabetically first one should be picked.
Okay, no, even before method.
Yeah,
If I
even
put
before method. Yeah. Let's comment this. Sorry, let's uncomment this, and let's also create one more thing. Let's say this method name is ABCD. Okay. You tell me which one will be executed first.
So if you mean it goes alphabetically, then ABCD first and setup next.
Okay, let's see what's happening. Okay. So the ABCD is executed first because it is alphabetically first, right? Again,
Okay.
guys, but why do you want to use two different methods? So if you want to execute this first, you have like this, right? Okay, you don't need this, right? Whatever the statements you want to execute in the first before method itself, right? Maybe in an interview they may ask if you have two before methods, which one will be executed first and all that. But yeah, as a good practice, try to have one before method and one after method. Don't try to have a lot of things because it will confuse you. Okay.
Okay, fine.
Any other doubts?
And Amundsen, this is not necessary. If we are using the before method, then we have to use the after method as well, right? It's not
Yes, it's
compulsory.
not compulsory.
Okay.
So here, if you notice, we have only used before method and after method is still in commented state. So only if you have prerequisite or precondition that needs to be done, so you can use before method. If there is any post conditions that you want to do, then you can use after method, and you can also use after method alone instead of before method. So there is no mandatory rules that you have to use both.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other doubts?
Yeah, but then you said the test should be independent. With actually one question, like if we have the same test we need to repeat, then do we need to write it again?
Just a minute. My battery is running low. Just a minute. Yes, we have to write it again. Right. For example, let's say you want to do manual testing, right? Let's say you want to add two different products to cart, and then you want to let's say you are going to Amazon, you are adding something and do all these things. Okay, let's say let's open Amazon.in as well. Okay, you have to test two products. Okay, maybe I will pick some mobiles. Let's say I want to pick some OnePlus, and you want to check whether this you can add this to cart. You have to make payment, you have to make a successful purchase. The same thing you want to do it for this, right? So you will run this whole thing right? So or you will do any mimicking. So you have to basically do that, right? Yeah, so that's how even how you test it manually, we are going to do that. Again, there are ways how you can optimize this. Maybe if you have some APIs where you can so let's say you are adding this product to the cart. Okay, add to the cart, and after this there will be on URL, maybe proceed to checkout. I'm giving all this. So basically, okay, so let's say I do the authentication, there will be a one endpoint. Okay, so maybe with that API you can inject a state into the browser. Okay, people may use all that, but the main thing is, okay, don't worry about all these things. Okay, you are not going to execute it manually, right? You're going to type it, right? Once you type it, you're gonna reuse the same thing. Why you are worrying about it, it's going to execute. Okay, so always keep in mind your test needs to be independent. Okay, if you want to reduce the execution time, we will run tests in parallel. Okay, if you're running 5 tests in parallel, 10 tests in parallel, 100 tests in parallel, you can also run 5,000 tests in parallel. Okay, so think about only leveraging the parallel execution. Okay, don't think about shortcuts, the cheap tricks to reduce the execution time. This is not really going to help you at the longer time.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So that's my concern was like we are repeating the code now, same code again. So
But your test needs to be more meaningful. Okay, so let's say you are using something, okay, in test 2, okay, nobody understands the flows, right? So you have two depends on methods. Okay, you have two depends on methods. You really don't know what this test is actually doing. Okay, so it has depends on methods. Okay, you understand. Okay, there is two depends on, maybe you'll have 5 depends on methods. Okay, then how will you know which one will be called first? Okay, when you want to debug someone, imagine someone is not newly joining your project. Okay, then they might not be in a state to understand what your code actually does. But if you do everything right, everything in the test class, they know what you are doing. Okay, if you use depends on method, depends on groups, lot of dependency, even you will forget after 2 days, okay, what you have done. Okay, that's the reality. Okay, so don't use them. I have had any, I have experienced all this. I'm telling you based on my experience. Okay, if you are telling, okay, you want to use depends on methods, depends on groups, you want to create more clumsy and chaotic code. Okay, that's the reality. So if you want to do that, you try it out, you learn yourself. Okay, and then you will rectify it at the later point of time.
yeah.
Okay, the best way to reduce the execution time is to use parallel execution. Keep this in mind. Okay, because if you are going to repeat something like navigate to cart page, do perform payment, if you are thinking this is going to take a lot of time, no, it will take only maybe 1 minute to navigate to different pages, add product to cart and all that. But on the longer run, okay, they are going to be really mature to test, which will be easy to maintain, it's easily scalable, and they will help you out when you're running your test in parallel. Okay, if you have a lot of dependencies, you never know which method is dependent on which one. Whether if you want to uncomment something, you don't know which is depending on dependent on, you will scratch your head. Okay, that's the problem. Don't do that. Okay, any more doubts? Okay, we'll wrap the session, guys. You all have a very good day. We'll again connect tomorrow and see about data provider and other some interesting topics. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks.